Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching or listening to this, and welcome to this week's episode of the No Identity Podcast. Now, this week we're joined by a dating and relationship coach for high achieving men, Stefania Pilau. Hi, Stefania, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lee. How are you?
Before we get into your dating and relationship coaching, can you just tell everyone who you are and where you grew up and stuff?
Yes, absolutely. Well, as you know, my name is Stefania Pulau, and I am from Melbourne, Australia. So I grew up, born and raised in Melbourne, in the suburbs of Melbourne. And yeah, I've lived here, but I've also done a lot of traveling throughout the world. So I'm pretty cultured. I lived in parts of America, Europe, and the Caribbean as well.
Oh, lovely. What's one of your favourite places that you lived in?
Um, I would have to say the Caribbean. I love the Caribbean, but then I loved Europe. I lived in Italy for 7 years, but I also
Nice.
traveled extensively right through Europe. So I don't know. Every place is magical, and yeah, I think if anyone's traveled, they can probably agree with me that every place has its own unique magic.
When you went back to Australia, was that just a conscious decision or did you just fulfill everything that you wanted to fulfill?
It was actually during COVID. So when COVID hit, at the end of 2019, I was actually visiting Australia. I was visiting my family for Christmas. And I went back of February 2020 when COVID was just starting to hit, particularly through Australia. But people were still flying in and out. And I said, oh, it'll blow over. I'll just go back to Europe. Everything will be fine. And of course, it didn't blow over. It actually got worse. And by, April the 8th, I was back in Melbourne. Yeah, last minute thing. I made a one-way ticket, packed my bags, and flew back. And yeah, I remained. I ended up staying because my father got sick, my mother got sick, and my father passed actually last year.
I'm sorry to
So
hear that.
there was a reason why I had to come back. So, and most of it was for caring for them as well as running my business.
Yeah. So you're a dating and relationship coach for high achieving men.
Tell you a little bit about my history and how
Yeah,
I got into this whole, men's coaching. It started way back. I used to be a hairstylist. So I used to work in a salon, a unisex salon. And of course, being a hairstylist, you get all the gossip, you get all the bitching, you get all the conversations that go on, particularly with women, and they open up. Women open up and will tell you how he's not listening, and if only he knew how I felt, if he could only just understand me, just all these conversations would go on. And of course, as a hairstylist, we were just allowed to listen but not respond. We were like these, you know, uh, people that could, a psychologist, but not a psychologist, so to speak, a
yeah.
sounding board. And yeah, so from hairdressing, I then moved on and became a personal trainer. And there again, I worked with men and women. And the women would again really open up and talk to me about their relationships and how men didn't understand. If only men knew. Men, men, men. And the men, on the other hand, they wouldn't open up to me. They would ask me questions. So they would say to me, Stefania, what do you think? Like, what do you think she's thinking? What do you think I should do? Like, if I do this, do you think she's going to react? So it was like this. They needed the information to know how a woman thought and if they were on the right track. So this kind of propelled me to do more research. And from there, I became a coach. And then as I coached more women, I really found that men were really missing out on knowing how women felt. So I said, I think men need help. There's a lot of women helping women, but I really want to be that advocate for men where I can be that, that go between and empower men on their journey by knowing more about how a woman thinks, and I believe in male to male therapy. I think that's really great coaching. But when it comes to dating a woman, I mean, let's face it, a woman knows how she feels when she's being courted or she's dating or whatever the case may be. So I'm coming from the perspective from a woman's point of view and how she doesn't say everything, how you got to read between the lines when she speaks, how you've got to uh, translate one sentence into what she really means. Yeah, you following me with this?
Yeah.
Which I get it. It confuses the hell out of men. We're not easy. I put my hand up. We are not easy. However, coming from this perspective, this is where I want to, empower men. I'm all about empowering them and giving them the tools and the skill set to actually know how to navigate through the dating scene, obviously, particularly now that we're all online. There's a lot of online dating, which, I'm hearing a lot of, I'm done with dating apps. I'm done with online dating. People are really longing to connect. I think that, connection is what people are really driving and yearning for.
Does that mean you're a coach for rich, successful men?
Okay, well, I'm really glad you asked me that question because every time someone hears high achieving men, they automatically think like successful, rich, entrepreneur, businessman. And it's not that at all. I mean, I do work with, highly successful men that, maybe own companies and businesses, etc. However, I don't only deal with that because high achieving to me is a man that is like a go-getter, someone who's setting goals and trying to achieve, you know, their own goals. So a high achieving man is someone that is not just laid back. He wants to transform, he wants to evolve, he wants to better himself. So yeah, that definition of a high achieving man, I really, I'm glad you asked me that. It's got nothing to do with rich men at all. That's how the whole Gentleman Square came about because, my
Yeah.
business name is Gentleman Square because I, would walk through the piazzas of Italy, which are the
Nice.
squares where the Duomo would be, and I would walk through and then one day it just dawned on me how all these men were in the piazza in a little a city called Ortigia in Syracuse. That's where I lived for 7 years. And I said, all these men in Italian, it's the Piazza degli Uomini. So translated in English was the Gentleman's Square. And I said, that's perfect. That's men live in that logical mindset, compartmentalize everything. Hence why the square and gentlemen, because we men are still striving to want to be men, so that's how that all came about.
And if someone wanted to be one of your clients, what's the process? Do they reach out to you online, and how do you go from there?
Okay, so they can reach out to me through all my social media or my email. So what I do, I usually do what I call an insight call. So it's a free consultation where you can ask me anything because I know, men, unlike women, they don't open up. Women open up and share and kumbaya with each other, whereas men are a little bit more hesitant. And again, because I am a female, they're like, I don't know. And all this goes through their mind. They have this dialogue going through their mind. But all I can say is I don't bite. I do give a free consultation. We get on a 15, 20-minute, call where we chat. It's purely a chat. You can ask me anything you like, and I'll ask you a few questions. I'll give you a few tips, a few suggestions, a few recommendations that can get you on your way to closer to attracting your ideal partner.
So you're not like a matching coach. So you don't match people together. You just give
Um,
advice on how people can move forward to getting to the person that's right for them.
Right. Well, interesting you asked me that because I do have a lot of people asking me, Stefania, do you know someone
Right? Yeah.
such and such? Do you know? And this is from both ends, men and women. So, I occasionally still, do see and help women, but again, predominantly men, and they come to me. So, what I'm actually doing within the next couple of months, I'm going to be actually starting some events. Now, these are going to be live events here in Melbourne. So anyone that's listening to this and lives in Melbourne, you're most welcome to come. Or if you're visiting Melbourne, and they're exclusive, I call them exclusive pop-up singles events. So pop-up meaning they will pop up in any area of Melbourne. And exclusivity is to the people that are really looking for a partner. Yeah. It's not, where you can just pick up and it's the whole
Mingle.
one night stand thing.
Yeah.
No, it's for people that are legitimately uh, interested in finding companionship. It doesn't mean to, husband or wife, just genuine, like-minded people.
And what would you say is a good icebreaker for someone? If say they met someone in a bar, they like the look of them. How would you advise someone to approach someone?
Well, that all depends. Okay, that's a whole process, because depending who you are dealing with, right? It depends on the energy that that person is emanating. Like, you may get a woman that's kind of like quite standoffish and won't give you eye contact, but in actual fact, she's quite interested in you and she's not making that known. Now, to some men, that's like mind games, but to women, it's not. It's not a mind game. She's kind of like protecting herself, and she's, wanting to see what your moves are. If anything, I always suggest to men, don't be someone that you're not. Be you, because women can really see through the whole acting thing, and someone that's being pretentious and using sleazy opening lines. You don't need to go that far, because women really want to be treated um, normal. If there's
No,
such a thing
exactly.
as normal, nothing that is too over the top, and nothing that is too low below the belt, we say here in Australia. Yeah, where you want to be a gentleman, you want to be chivalrous, but not in a way that's sleazy. Yeah.
No, exactly. And moving on to you running a business, how do you find what's the daily struggle you have in actually being an entrepreneur?
Um, I actually don't have struggles. I mean, people have asked me that all the time, and it's because I love what I do. So for me, it's just a passion. I love waking up in the morning and knowing that I'm just working with people to, being more in love, but not only with others, be in love with themselves, because ultimately that's where it all starts. And my process of coaching isn't just coaching. I am a therapist as well, so I deal with a lot of clients that have had past traumatic relationship breakups, had their hearts ripped out of their chests. They are suffering trauma. They suffer from trust issues, their fear of commitment. So when you're going through all that and you haven't healed from that trauma and that traumatic, heartbreak, it's going to be very difficult to move on and start something new. As much as it's fresh and lovely, and, all the endorphins are firing fireworks, it's like a wound. You need to get in underneath and clean that up before it's actually going to heal. So I always say, if you've got things that are affecting, obviously that all comes up in the whole session, the therapy sessions that we do. And yeah, so we work with that, and then we move forward in finding your ideal partner.
Yeah, and also how did COVID, how's that affected the dating scene since? Because we spent 2 years locked away, sort of in our own little bubbles, and all of a sudden the world opened up and we found each other again. I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but I feel like we sort of forgot how to be around how to socialise well, because we've been in our own little bubble for so long. Do you see that on the dating scene since like post COVID?
Absolutely. And this is something that unfortunately people are conditioning themselves to keep going with that. Okay, when we were in COVID, we know we had to rely more on digital devices to connect with people, FaceTime or messaging, texting. But what's happened is a lot of people have remained in that mode and,
Yeah,
that conditioning. And unfortunately, it's not the way to date. People want to still connect. And that's what I really encourage, both men and women, but men to get out of that texting and start talking to those women, and get that feel of her energy in her voice, her tonality. Is she interested? Is she just playing you? Is she a scammer? There's so much going on in this dating arena that you have to be very vigilant and look out for red flags, because you can be drawn into something which is not, healthy. Let's face it, not healthy for your own sanity. So, yes, it has made people still stay in that cocoon state, and some people have broken away from it. I feel that women have broken away from it more than men, and want to get into meeting face to face. Whereas for some unknown, whether it's losing self-confidence, I know a lot of people have lost a lot of low, self-confidence. They've got low self-esteem. They're not feeling good in their own bodies, healthy in their own bodies, because physically they didn't move around a lot. So yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things. So it's definitely had an impact.
you're offering our viewers and our listeners a free guide. What's the guide about?
Okay, you can get the free guide. It's a free gift dot at the Gentleman's Square. I guess you will leave a link down
Yeah, the link
below.
will be in the description. Yeah,
Right. It's a free guide to how to attract your ideal partner. Um, it's a guide that is going to help you avoid all the pitfalls in dating, in navigating, the landscape of dating. So it's a really good read. It's got some really good points in it. And yeah, it's a free gift for anyone out there that wants to grab it.
brilliant. Thank you. We really appreciate that. So obviously you deal with people wanting to date. Do you feel like the advice you give as well will help people who's been in a marriage? Because I've been married to my wife 6 years. We've been together 17. Do you feel like dating tips can still help people in long-term relationships?
Absolutely. Yeah. Rekindling that flame. So, as you are probably aware, sometimes after a long extended period, that flame can dwindle down and that spark is gone. And a lot of couples just don't know how to rekindle that relationship because everyone starts, segregating, and something's going on in her mind and something's going on in his mind, and the communication is less and less. And before you know it, we have a problem because no one knows what's going on, but yet you're feeling this animosity, this resentment, this anger, this frustration, whatever it is. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, because I have worked with couples, it's that communication breakdown, and there needs to be conversation. So I do help people in how to start conversations, how to, get to know your partner again, start, you know, organizing and setting date nights, particularly if you do have children, because of course everything changes when you have
Yeah,
children, right? And then the dog and the cat and everything else that comes with it.
yeah.
So yeah, definitely there are some great tips that I often say, go back to when you first started dating. Like, go back to that feeling and what you would do to get her attention. What would you do to, make her feel good and all that? Let's face it, men bend over backwards to get that happening in the beginning, right? In the courting period. And so will she. She will do anything and everything for you. But then after a period, it's just like, oh, do it yourself. Oh, you didn't take dishes out of the dishwasher, or you didn't put the rubbish out. Oh, do I have to tell you? And that goes on and on and on, right? Communication is king.
No, brilliant. just before we go, we've got one last question, and this is a question I ask every guest. And your
Mm.
answer will not change your life journey so far. But if you had 30 seconds with your 13-year-old self, what would you say?
Just, evolve. If only you had taken up more courses and connected with more groups and joined more teams, just really be out there, do as much as you can, because I think when we can just get involved and allow ourselves to just be in the flow without fear, that's when we're our best, right? And that's what I would say to my 13-year-old self.
Well, brilliant. It's been lovely speaking to you. It's very interesting. And remember, people, if you want to reach out, please check the links below. And I'd love to have you come back on in a couple of months and we can go a bit more in depth. So thank you so much for your time today.
Great. Thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me.